Brisbane Airport has a long record of outstanding performance. We thought that in combination with the very carefully thought out plans they had in the future, that the private market would view the airport as a good, sound investment for many years to come. The result of the transaction was really a trifecta for the company, and that they were able to receive the volume that they were seeking. They were also able to receive the tenors they were seeking, and also the pricing. Sometimes the best opportunity resides in a source you never quite expected.
Well, Graeme, thanks for being our first interview on CEO Hub on Business Spectator. It's great to have you.
My pleasure.
Now, you've been CEO for about 5 years of Orica, and you've actually been with the company for more than 20 years. And a part of your time was spent as the head of the paints division, among other things. And of course, one of the things you've done now is to hive off the paints division from Orica. Was that a hard emotional decision to do that and to, at the same time, reduce the size of the company?
Look, it is a difficult decision in many ways, but there are two sides to that equation. One is the sort of emotional loss of spinning off a business for which you've got a great affection. The other is, though, a sense that it's the right thing to do for the business, and that the people who are down there managing that business have a great future in front of them on the basis of a very strong business model. So it's mixed feelings, and it seems to have worked well.
Why is it better for them? Were they being stultified within Orica and your management within Orica? Or do you take that as some sort of reflection on yourself?
Look, I take it as a risk, really. The guys down there would have said that they were not hampered in terms of the management of the business until now. But the reality is that over time, we're getting a bigger business in the mining side. That's a relatively capital-intensive business, and I think just over time there was a risk that the Dulux business got less attention, not just from us as managers and the board as directors, but potentially too from the external investing community. It sort of gets lost inside our portfolio.
Were there ever any doubts in your mind that it was the right thing to do?
Oh yeah, we thought about it a lot. I mean, Dulux is a very good business. It's a cash-generating business, and some would say we should have kept it to use the cash for investment in other parts of our business. But again, I think that's the kind of risk that we're talking about, that if you think that way about a business, you run the risk of sub-optimising it.
It often seems that a CEO's salary is to some extent determined by the size of the company. Was there ever any question that you'd take a pay cut because the company shrank?
We did get that question once at a meeting, but I don't think it was one that was very seriously considered. Actually, the company over time is continuing to grow. One of the things we're most proud of is that even with the spin-offs of Qenos and Incitec and Dulux, we've been able to continue the growth of the business over time.
So what does being a CEO mean to you?
Well, you know, it sort of never leaves you, Alan. I was just speaking to somebody the other day and they said, is it a 24/7 job? Well, it's not a 24/7 job, I don't think, in the sense that it's not that you can't get away from it in terms of work. But no matter what you're doing, it's always there at the back of your mind. You're always thinking about it. And you feel that responsibility and accountability for the direction of the business as a whole, the shareholders, the employees and so on.
Who do you feel most responsible to, the employees or the shareholders?
Well, I think employees, shareholders and customers all sort of rank up there. I wouldn't want to choose in a way. On a day-to-day basis, you know, you spend so much time with your employees. I guess that's the thing that's most immediate.
And what was your particular pathway to becoming a CEO? And as you look back on your career, were there key moments as you went along that were a turning point for you?
Yeah, there was. I think actually joining ICI back in the late 80s, I made the decision to join ICI at that time because I wanted to go into general management. Until that time, I'd been either in the academic world or a specialist in marketing or whatever it was. And I felt that I'd like the opportunity to become a general manager, lead people, have bottom line accountability, all of that. I got the opportunity with this company back then, and I think that was probably the single most important decision that I made on the way to becoming CEO.
But right back when you were with Boston Consulting Group, didn't you think at that point that you'd like to manage a company as well as advise the managers of companies?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you get that feeling that you'd like to have the bottom line accountability, you'd like to be implementing things as well as just thinking about them and recommending them, and you'd like the opportunity to lead people. And the other thing that ICI did for me very early on was to give me a lot of leadership training. And so I was able to make that transition from being a specialist in a particular area, valued for that advice, to acknowledging that what you achieve in life is really about what you achieve through others.
And what was the best of that training that you got?
Well, we use a system which was based on what was back then a Hay methodology. These days is a Hay-McBurr methodology, and
you're still using the same system?
We're still using it, yeah, and we still train the vast majority of our middle managers in that system.
And what's the essence of that system?
Well, the essence is to think about your impact as a leader, as distinct from just the contribution you make in terms of your specialist discipline or whatever it might be. To reconceptualise that really your achievement is all about what you can achieve through others, as distinct from what you can achieve as an individual contribution to a corporation.
So what was the best advice, or what were some of the good pieces of advice that you received along the way?
I think the main thing is just this self-awareness, that you need to think about your impact on others, and you need to just change your mental mindset to acknowledge that and think about how you get the best out of others rather than just think about your own contribution.
So when you talk about it being 24/7, or not quite a job 24/7, but always on your mind,
yes,
that's what you're thinking about, is it?
Well, you're thinking about that. You're thinking about the strategy. You're thinking about the way the world's evolving and how you need to react to those things. Looking over your shoulder at what competitors are doing and so on. It's the full story.
But when you were advising managers and CEOs at BCG, has the world changed? Is it very different now in being a CEO to what it was in those days?
Look, I think one thing that's changed over that period is that everything's much quicker. The decision-making process now is far faster even than it was in the late 80s, which is when I was working for BCG. These days everybody's connected. Decisions are made with the same amount of information, I think, but with a much shorter time frame.
What about the changes in the way that boards operate? I mean, you know, a lot of directors talk about the greater responsibilities, on a much greater intensity of focus, much greater talk about stakeholders. You know, when we talked about whether you put shareholders or employees or customers first, that really wasn't the case. It seems to me in the old days, it certainly wasn't publicly so. I mean, has the atmosphere around being a CEO changed, do you think?
Look, I think the boardroom environment has changed. Not so much in principle, because I think the accountabilities of boards have always been the same. But I'd make a couple of observations. One is that the scrutiny on boards in terms of their focus on governance has increased, there's no doubt about that. And so it occupies more of the board's time than it did once. And the second thing is to say that the whole focus of a corporation in terms of its corporate social responsibility has been broadened. And I think those things now occupy more of a board's time than they did.
And what about the marketing aspect of being a CEO in terms of to the markets? You know, you get the sense that CEOs are, every 6 months you've got to do a roadshow, you've got to present yourself to the institutions. Is that a more intense experience than it used to be?
Look, I'm not sure about that. I've been a CEO here for 5 or 6 years, and I was in a position to observe other CEOs for probably 5, 6 years before that. I think it's been pretty constant. Actually, I try and work it out. I think it takes about 15% of my time, something like that.
So what advice would you give to people who are coming into general management, coming out of a specialist discipline and thinking about becoming a manager and so on? What would you advise them?
Well, I think developing those leadership skills are really important, and it runs into questions of how well you communicate, how well you understand people, how well you develop people, how well you select people. So, I mean, the single biggest piece of advice is to think about your impact on how you can achieve things through people rather than on an individual basis.
Yes, but I mean that's pretty broad. I mean, I mean, people are all different. Everyone's different, aren't they?
Yes, that's right.
You need to presumably adapt yourself to which executive you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, people are different, and you do adopt different approaches with different individuals because you know things motivate people in different ways, and that's a talent as well, I think.
And do you think, I mean, you run a sort of a global company in many ways, I mean, from Australia, so you're in contact with CEOs from all over the world. And
yes.
Do you think there's anything particular about being a CEO in Australia as opposed to elsewhere?
I think Australians are well accepted in the world, and because, ironically enough, because of our isolation, we tend to travel a lot. And therefore I think we've got certain advantages in terms of dealing with different cultures and so on. We've got an inclination to try and understand those cultures and work within those different environments. So I think Australians have some advantages. I think running a global business from Australia is not ideal. Everything's a long way. But I suppose running a global business from anywhere is pretty tough. And so again, it comes back to selecting the right people, getting the right systems in place, having the right culture in the organisation.
What about the future for you? Do you feel like now that you've demerged and Dulux has gone off, do you feel like you're starting again?
Yeah, I do actually. You know, you feel like having resolved the portfolio question now, so that we're more than 90% mining related, that it's a new beginning for the company, and particularly having come through the global financial crisis over the past couple of years, and now our customers talking so positively about their plans for the future and the expansion that they're intending to put in place, it feels like a new beginning, that we've got tons of opportunity in front of us, and you know, we're looking forward to growing with our customers.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Graeme. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alan.